My pranams to Sadhguru, members of the clergy, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to all of you. This day is very special, ladies and gentlemen, because on a day like this, approximately 2332 years ago, the son of Emperor Ashoka, Arahat Mahinda, came to Sri Lanka to help us establish a system, a proper system of government, because as you know, the Buddha visited, according to chronicles, Sri Lanka 3 times. So we are the first nation to issue visa on arrival to Indians. But he never pushed us to be Buddhists. It was Emperor Ashoka who thought that we have to be helped. So, as you know, after chasing King Nandasena away, the Mauryans established power. And the most powerful among them was Ashoka the Great, who was very well respected in Sri Lanka. He was considered a man of action since he educated most neighboring countries on the Dasaraja Dharma, or the Buddhist teachings on how to govern a country properly. I don't want to go into detail on the Dasaraja Dharma. So, therefore, we in Sri Lanka still, as I said, we respect Emperor Ashoka. Sri Lankans are used to the welfare state, only talk, no action. As you know, you may, not all, but most of them. So, most of them conduct protest near the famous Fort railway station, which looks a little like the Egmore station, under a particular statue, a statue of an American colonel whose name is Henry Steele Olcott. Olcott is an American who came to Sri Lanka in the late 1880s and helped the Buddhists very much to establish schools, etc. Across the street from that statue, ladies and gentlemen, if you may Google and see, is the Theosophical Society of Sri Lanka, which is a very old building, and it's a protected building. Theosophists, as some of you may know and believe, think that Henry Steele Olcott was a reincarnation of Ashoka. So that's what some of the Sri Lankans also believe. Ashoka's son Arahat Mahinda, on a day like this, as I said, delivered the first sermon to introduce Buddhist way of life to the Sri Lankans, including the king. It was known as the Chulla Hatti Padopama Sutra, or the analysis of the small elephant's footprint. There's another sutra called the Maha Hatti Padopama Sutra, which means the analysis of the big elephant's footprint. So, Mahinda may have expected, Arahat Mahinda may have expected to train Sri Lankans to avert conflicts and be resilient. If he was alive, he may have had different views. But he preached, according to chronicles, suppose an elephant hunter was to enter an elephant forest and see a large elephant footprint, long and broad. A skilled hunter would not yet come to the conclusion, what a big bull elephant. Why is that? Because in an elephant forest, there are dwarf female elephants with big feet. The footprint might be one of theirs, he said. So he proceeds and sees another large elephant footprint, long and broad, and some scratch marks high up. A skilled hunter would not yet come to the conclusion, what a big bull elephant. Why is that? Because in a forest, there can be tall female elephants with prominent teeth and big feet. The footprint might be one of theirs. So he proceeds and sees a large elephant footprint, long and broad, with some scratch marks, tusk slashes high up, and broken branches. There he sees that big bull elephant at the foot of a tree, or walking, standing, sitting, or lying down. He comes to the conclusion that is the big bull elephant that I was looking for. In the same way, when a Buddha appears in the world, he said, the Buddha teaches the Dharma admirable in its beginning, middle and end. He speaks in season what is factual with the goal, dharma and discipline. His words are worth treasuring, seasonable, reasonable, circumscribed and focused on the goal. He would teach his followers that Arhat mind meant my own people, that they abstain from damaging life, not to take what is not given, refrain from sexual acts that aren't ethical, abandon false speech, and abstain from addictive substances. To his disciples, ladies and gentlemen, Arhat mind said that the Buddha told his disciples, eat once a day and refrain from evening meal and food at the wrong time. Abstain from dancing, singing, instrumental music and from watching shows or stage dramas. Abstain from wearing garlands, from beautifying self with scents and cosmetics. Abstain from high and luxurious beds and seats. Abstain from accepting gold and money. Abstain from accepting uncooked grain, raw meat, women and girls, male and female slaves, animals, birds and fields and property. Abstain from buying and selling, dealing with false scales, false metals, false measures, bribery, deception and fraud. Abstain from mutilating, executing, imprisoning, highway robbery, plunder and violence. Analyzing the situation now, I have my reservations, ladies and gentlemen, about the situation in Sri Lanka, on the Buddha's advice to his disciples and what is happening right now in Sri Lanka. But I hope and pray that we will stick to the advice of the Buddha for more and more years. And 2024, that is this year, being an election year, Sri Lankans will have to be very wise like the hunter, ladies and gentlemen. Because that is one way of preventing and resoluting conflicts that are on surface and below surface in Sri Lanka. So I believe that first they may follow the Buddha's advice to his followers, the 5 that I mentioned. It will minimize conflicts in a society. Second, they should wisely analyze and identify the matured to manage the country. I'm not talking politics, but we have to select the right people. So far, people have selected, and I don't know whether it's right or wrong. Buddha's advice to his disciples should be analyzed when selecting managers, because it can be, those qualities can be of value when you select public administrators with regard to Sri Lanka. I'm talking about Sri Lanka. And we Sri Lankans will have to think of the Indians and the Chinese when we are talking about, especially about Buddhism and the 21st century economic development. Indians and the Chinese, as you know, were both exposed to Buddhism. The Chinese learned Buddhism from Bodhidharma, the famous monk from South India, and the travels of Xuanzang and Emperor Asoka, indeed. And even his daughter Sanghamitha via Sri Lanka. As you know, China got the Buddhist nuns through Sanghamitha via Sri Lanka. So, the Indians and the Chinese, I think, acted like the experienced hunter, and now they are enjoying the results with very strong economics and very powerful societies being global powers. So if Sri Lankans think that way, they can be proud about their country. On the 23rd of February 1940, American composer Woody Guthrie first composed the folk song this land is your land, this land is my land, from California to New York Island. I'm sure you must have heard of that song. However, the Red Indians think that it is their land. That's their matter. As you know, the Chinese Admiral Cheng He has been there during the same time when he visited Saudi Arabia, Java, Zanzibar, Calicut in India and Sri Lanka. However, there was no stories of colonization, but Western colonization attracted people from Europe, Asia and Africa to the land of the Red Indians, which is now the United States of America. Among them were the Indians of South Asia, and professionals with Indian origins, as you know, are running some of the key establishments in the USA at present, and even in England, in British Empire. So we have this young, energetic minister named Harin Fernando, who's in charge of tourism and sports and land. Sometime back, he made a comment in India. He said he was talking about developing tourism and economics and with collaboration with the Indians. So when he made these comments on Indo-Lanka relations, he was criticized by many. Among them are those who make offerings to the Indian philosopher Buddha on a daily basis. Buddha visiting Sri Lanka and assigning locations for future projects is considered sacred, ladies and gentlemen. Even now, we talk about how Buddha allocated certain locations to build certain places of worship are considered very important. Then on the day the Buddha passed away, Prince Vijaya from South India came to Sri Lanka with 700 men and established settlements and named them after his men. And Emperor Asoka, later deploying professionals from 64 walks of life, along with his son and daughter to put systems in place, indicates a complicated bond that Sri Lanka would not be able to live without. Those concerned should study the conflict prevention skills of the Japanese in Okinawa, the people in Mauritius near Diego Garcia, and the conflict prevention skills of the Spanish living near the British in Gibraltar. However, becoming more global may reduce regional impact on Sri Lanka, and it is good for Sri Lankans as well, because as you know, our number one resource is the human resource. We don't have that much of natural resources. Few months ago, ladies and gentlemen, the chief prelates of the 3 Buddhist chapters wrote to President Wickremesinghe, warning of civil unrest that can arise due to privatizing national assets. As you know, we are coming out of an economic crisis and we are realizing that nationalizing is not the way as Indian economists told us in the 1960s. We have to do otherwise. Actually, Indian economists advised us nationalizing should not be the way in the 1960s. We didn't do that. It may be those making money using state-owned label planning the unrest. That is what I feel. Because in Sri Lanka, unrests and strikes can be organized for personal gains. If not, it is a good opportunity to analyze the need to reduce wastage and increase efficiency in state enterprises. Because there can be entities which are technically making profit, but which can make more profit if properly managed. The civil society should monitor and discourage Russian-style privatization. That is the talk of the town these days, which happened after the fall of the USSR. But still, more progressive changes should be supported, as it would create a surplus to reduce cost of living. Foreign direct investments from any source would be encouraging, and if rejected, I am sure those will flow elsewhere. For that, ladies and gentlemen, uniting as one is very important. We are only 25,000 square miles, and it's a very colorful mix of ethnic groups, but still some are fighting, not on surface but underneath. As you know, the Sinhala and the Tamil communities celebrate the Sinhala Hindu New Year in April, showcasing the historic bond which prevails over thousands of years. And this year, interestingly, they were divided on deciding the auspicious time to unite, because the astrologers were arguing with each other on deciding the time. But anyway, somehow we managed to overcome that and we decided on a time. But they were still divided on the time to unite. Some also dispute on the Kurundi temple lands in the northern province. You may have read about the Kurundi temple issue. Kurundi monastery, constructed in the 1st century before Christ, is considered sacred as the Buddha had visited the site during his 2nd visit. I mentioned that he was there on 3 occasions. And also, some Sri Lankans believe that Kalinga Maga, whom some believe that he came from India and some believe that he came from Malaysia, the present day Klang Valley of Malaysia, it has been one of his bases, military bases, the Kurundi temple. And the British Archaeological Commissioner, famous H.C.P. Bell, gazetted approximately 78 acres of the Kurundi lands as an archaeological site in 1933 and left it to the Sinhala and the Tamil communities in 1948. After 3 decades, the Sinhala and the Tamils, they started killing each other for very minor reasons. For over 30 years they were fighting, and now the ground reality in Kurundi has changed with the rest of the society, and by now the people are still arguing, some of them are still arguing on the land and the ownership. Sri Lankans should unite to use Kurundi to develop the district that is, which is located in the northern province and the country. How can they do that? I feel that they should learn from other success stories, like the Cambodians are having a hard rock cafe in the middle of Siam Reef, if you have been to that. And the Chinese are having the West Slender Lake as a tourist attraction. And they are both using modern high-tech to attract tourists, like 3D animations, virtual tours, etc., etc. So speaking of high-tech, for conflict prevention, ladies and gentlemen, experienced conflict management managers would know that high-tech artificial intelligence can be used to mislead ill-informed masses, very especially Sri Lankans. It would reverse economic development. And recently, I'm sure you may have read somewhere, French scientists have proved that artificial intelligence can turn brain waves into paintings or a picture on the screen. So they have used artificial intelligence to reconstruct visualizing in a human brain to create artwork. You should read about it. My mother-in-law is dead, but if she was alive, I would have checked that on her. So, in other words, the images a human visualizes when thinking of an object, experience, or a situation can now be printed on paper or displayed on screen. Human thinking should dominate so that computers would draw peace. The enlightenment of the Buddha is an example for that. After enlightening, Buddha preached that his philosophy, as you know, is not a speculative philosophy, is a universal law found only through enlightenment, and is preached precisely, Swakata in Pali. His philosophy is testable and by practice and by experience, Sandittika. And his philosophy is timeless, Akalika. That is very important, timeless. His philosophy welcomes all beings to test and experience for themselves, Ehipassika, can be entered upon, and it is worthy to be followed as a part of life, Opanayika, may be perfectly realized only by the noble, matured and enlightened in supreme wisdom, Pacchattam Veditabbo, referring to Anguttara Nikaya. The practicing Buddhists would know that Dhamma is timeless. So, artificial intelligence is not a threat to Dhamma, that we should realize. So, it is the best tool for conflict prevention in Sri Lanka, to my understanding. Thank you very much.